Hi, and welcome. In this video, we're focusing on cross 15 of our Guppy breeding project. The primary goal for this particular cross was twofold. First, to increase the number of offspring inheriting the notable iridescent forehead trait from our male Thorn. And second, to draw those offspring closer to the overall snow-white phenotype we're aiming for. However, we've encountered a significant problem with this cross. A high number of the fry are developing swim bladder issues. This is an unfortunate development, and it means we're now seriously reconsidering the future use of Thorn and potentially his genetic line in this project. For those who might be new here, I'm Ivan. This channel essentially documents my long-term project to establish a stable snow-white guppy line, a goal we're actually getting very close to achieving. More recently though, a second interesting objective emerged, trying to integrate a distinct iridescent forehead characteristic, which is particularly visible on our male Thorn, into that snow-white line. Our first dedicated attempt at this was cross 14. Where Thorn was bred with one of his sisters. That cross produced a healthy group of fry, but none of the males showed that strong forehead iridescence like their father. After carefully analyzing that outcome, our working theory became that this iridescent trait might be sex-linked, likely carried on the X chromosome. This meant that the females from cross 14 likely inherited those genes. I've started using those cross 14 females in other pairings, but I also wanted to expand the gene pool and increase the number of potential iridescent carriers. That's exactly why I set up cross 15, pairing Thorn with a couple of females from cross 11, designated here as C11AF. Since cross 11 represents our closest line to truly uniform snow-white guppies, using females from there for cross 15 was a perfect way to introduce the iridescent forehead trait directly into our primary snow-white goal. I selected 2 healthy females from cross 11 and set them up with Thorn last November. Starting with 2 females usually boosts the initial success rate, but I learned from cross 13 that using multiple females, even if they look identical, can complicate genetic analysis if they carry different hidden genes. So the plan for cross 15 was to focus only on the first female to produce a healthy brood, to keep things clear. I've already got a few batches of fry from these females, but before we actually look at them, let's quickly run through the genetics and predict what phenotypes we should expect from this pairing, based on what we know about Thorn and the C11 females. For their base body color, Thorn carries gray while the females are blonde. So we predict a roughly 50-50 mix of gray and blonde offspring. With magenta, I'm quite confident we'll see it expressed in nearly 100% of the fry, as at least one parent likely carries 2 copies of the dominant gene. The recessive Storsbach trait is present in both parents, so 100% of the offspring should inherit that as well. Finally, regarding the recessive European Blau, Thorn is a carrier for this trait, and that's why he has that red color because of that opposing dominant allele. And the C11 females are homozygous for it. This genetic combination suggests we'll see another 50-50 split between red and non-red fry. So pulling these predictions together, we expect to see a fairly even distribution across 4 distinct phenotypes in this cross 15. I've listed them out in the table you can see now. These are phenotypes we've encountered before, notably in cross 14. However, compared to cross 14, we expect a significantly lower number of red offspring here, purely because Thorn is simply a carrier for that European Blau gene this time, unlike in cross 14, where both parents were carriers. Alright, let's actually take a look at the fry we've gotten from cross 15 so far. As you know, there are several batches, and this group right here is the latest, born on April 27th. Immediately, you can see the significant problem we've run into. The vast majority of these fry are having trouble swimming normally, essentially just staying near the bottom. This swim bladder issue isn't limited to just this batch. It seems almost every drop from each of these C11A females is affected. I think Doug Gray from the D. Gray Guppies YouTube channel calls these types of fry sliders. Looking at this fresh batch, it's pretty clear. Only one single fry appears able to swim and stay buoyant near the surface. When I first noticed how many sliders there were, I really hoped that they were just weak because they were brand new fry. Unfortunately, even as they grew bigger and stronger, they never regained normal buoyancy. They might reach the surface briefly, but they still look like they're struggling to stay balanced. This same persistent issue is happening with the offspring from the second female as well. Plus, to make things worse, a few of her fry also developed bent spines. So the big question becomes, why is this happening? Is it something in the tank environment, or are we dealing with a genetic issue? I'm strongly leaning towards genetics. I haven't seen problems like this at this severity in any of my other current crosses, which gives me confidence in ruling out widespread environmental factors. So if it's genetic, who's the source? Thorn, the C11A females, or potentially both? While I suspect Thorn is largely the culprit, I'm not completely certain. The uncertainty comes from a few things. Thorn had healthy offspring in cross 14. And importantly, sisters of the C11A females are producing healthy fry in crosses 16 and 20. And their brothers in crosses 18 and 19 are also producing healthy broods. The fact that both of the initial C11A females produced unhealthy fry strongly suggested Thorn was the common denominator and likely source of the genetic issue. However, before definitively concluding it was Thorn, I wanted to strengthen that suspicion with more data. So, I introduced a third C11 female to him on April 3rd. Interestingly, she dropped her very first brood on April 27th, the exact same day as female number 2's latest batch that we just looked at. Unfortunately, the brood from this third female told the same sad story. Most of the fry were sliders again, and simply didn't survive. I wasn't able to get footage of them as newborns, because being weak sliders makes them quick snacks for the mother after giving birth. Only 2 fry from this brood made it, and they were clearly exhibiting the slider issue, just like their half-siblings from the other females. Honestly, as difficult as it is to say, I believe this marks the end of using Thorn as a breeder in this project. The consistent results of unhealthy offspring across 3 different cross 11 females provide sufficient evidence for me to conclude he likely carries genetics that severely impact fry health. I'll keep him in a tank just in case, but I'm doubtful the conclusion will change. This is a real setback, especially for our goal of developing the iridescent forehead trait. Thorn was the cornerstone for this objective, possessing a level of iridescence I hadn't seen elsewhere, and the initial plan was to use him to rapidly increase our numbers of iridescent carriers. Losing him is a significant blow to that effort. But on a more positive note, there might still be hope for the iridescent forehead trait. It appears one of the males from cross 11 also shows noticeable iridescence on his forehead. It's not quite as intense as Thorns, but it's definitely stronger than what I've observed in our standard Snow Whites. I'm currently using this male in cross 18, and encouragingly, that pairing is producing a substantial amount of healthy fry. The females used for cross 18 come from cross 13, whose mothers were sisters to Thorn, so there's a genetic link back to that iridescent line. This suggests our iridescent forehead project might not be entirely lost. Thorn is also currently part of cross 17, which is a back cross pairing him with one of his own daughters. We haven't seen any fry from this cross yet. Given the significant issues encountered in cross 15, I'm going to hold off on officially closing cross 17 and wait a bit longer to see if any viable fry appear. Alright, let's circle back to look at cross 15. Given the overall health issues, I didn't spend time separating the males and females as they grew, prioritizing tank space for healthier crosses since we won't be using any of these guppies in the future. Despite the problems, I decided it's still worth documenting the phenotypes that did emerge. Data is data after all, and you never know if it could be useful later on. We won't do a full progressive selection like in my other videos. Instead, we'll quickly categorize them into those 4 main predicted phenotypes. Many are still young, but their base body color is usually visible. So I'll tally both the 4 specific phenotypes and the overall base body color distribution. Starting with female number 1. She's given us a total of 12 offspring so far. The most striking observation immediately was the sex ratio. Out of the ones old enough to determine, 10 were male, with just 2 still juvenile. That's an incredibly high percentage of males, around 83%. More importantly, regarding their health, only 2 out of the 12 were healthy and didn't show signs of swim bladder issues. As for phenotypes, we did see the expected 4 types: gray-red, gray-white, blonde-red, and blonde-white. Female ones count breaks down to 1 gray-red male, 2 gray-white males, 2 blonde-red males, and 5 blonde-white males. Those blonde-white males would have been perfect potential Snow Whites if they weren't affected by the slider problem. The 2 juveniles were either gray or blonde-based. Overall for her brood, there was a slight lean towards blonde bases, but the overwhelming observation is definitely the surprising male dominance. Moving on to female number 2. She also produced 12 fry so far. 6 of these are still juveniles, too young to sex or show full color, but their base body color seems evenly split between gray and blonde. Crucially, out of the 6, only 1 single fry appears to have no swim bladder issues. The other 6, which were older, were all males. Okay, confirming that strong male bias we saw with female 1. Looking at the phenotypes among these 6 older males, there were 0 gray reds, 2 gray whites, 2 blonde reds, and 2 blonde whites. So, genetically, the phenotypes were pretty spread out, except for that missing gray red. But again, only 1 of these older 6 was able to swim normally. Finally, from that third C11A female we introduced to get more data, she only has 2 fry remaining. Both of them are gray-based, and sadly, yes, they are also clearly showing the same swim bladder problems. So summing up the numbers across all the broods from Cross 15, we documented a total of 26 fry. Out of the 16 old enough for sex and color identification, every single one was male. That's 100% of the identifiable fry, making it around 61.5% of the total brood so far. This incredibly skewed male ratio is a truly interesting and frankly puzzling trend that's hard to fully interpret. One potential hypothesis is maybe there's a gene causing female fry to simply not survive, while the males develop the swim bladder issues. But that's just speculation based on the results. Further experimentation would unfortunately mean creating more unhealthy fish, which I'm not willing to do. Ultimately, with only about 15% of the entire brood appearing healthy, the success rate is simply too low to justify using any of these offspring for future breeding. Now, looking specifically at the phenotype distributions we've observed. For base body color, we saw about 58% blonde and 42% gray. This is a slight tilt towards blonde, but still reasonably close to the 50-50 prediction. Regarding the color patterns, this brood actually produced more of the snow white or blonde white variations than any of the other 3 possible phenotypes. This would have been really encouraging for our snow white goal, if, of course, the overall brood hadn't been so unhealthy. We also noted only 1 gray-red phenotype among the older fry, potentially influenced by the slight blonde-based bias, but that count might adjust slightly as the juveniles develop. Okay, so what's the takeaway from Cross 15? The results here are unfortunately quite poor, and it's genuinely sad to see so many unhealthy fry. It's a tough but important lesson that not every cross will succeed, highlighting why it's crucial to diligently document outcomes, both good and bad. While I've actively tried to diversify my lines, it's possible that some level of inbreeding is contributing to these issues, and perhaps introducing genetics from completely unrelated lines, like our red rosetails, could help mitigate this in the future. On a brighter note, remember that Cross 11 male with elevated forehead iridescence? He gives us a path forward for that specific objective, so the iridescent goal isn't lost. As for Cross 15 itself, we're officially moving on. This will be the final video dedicated to it. I've combined all the surviving fry into a single tank to free up space for my healthier crosses. Realistically, to prevent these undesirable genetics from spreading, I'll likely be giving these Cross 15 offspring to someone who has a predator fish. Alrighty, I think that wraps up our look at Cross 15. While the outcome was unfortunate, there were definitely some valuable lessons to take away. If you're interested in following the full journey of this breeding project, including all the successes and challenges across our many crosses, be sure to subscribe. In our next video, we'll officially introduce Cross 16. This pairing involves a snow white male from Cross 9 that shows some half-black characteristics, and a snow white female from Cross 11. It's a particularly interesting cross because it's testing an early assumption I made about the half-black trait being X-linked. And just to give you a little teaser, the initial results suggest that almost none of the males are showing the half-black trait. Finally, some quick updates on how our other crosses are progressing. Cross 17. The back cross pairing Thorn with one of his daughters still hasn't produced any fry. Given the issues in Cross 15, I'll likely be closing this one out soon. Let me know in the comments if you'd still like to see a brief update video on it. Cross 18. This promising cross between a Cross 11 male and a Cross 13 female is doing very well. We've got 2 healthy broods from this pairing, which is fantastic news, especially for that iridescent trait goal. Auxiliary Cross 2. Our pure breeding red rose backup line has just dropped its first brood. Crosses 19 and 20. Our pairings involving snow white males and red roses, Cross 19, and its reciprocal, Cross 20, also have their first broods now, with Cross 20s being about 2 weeks older. If you're curious about the origins of the Iridescent Forehead project, you can check out this video here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.